Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Kuf Tes Amud Beis, starting with Daf Kuf Tes Amud Aleph, 11 lines from the bottom. After the Gemara discusses the Dalit Koisos, Hakol Chayovim B'Dalit Koisos Halalu, Echad Anoshim Ve'echad Noshim, and we learn that each kois has to be made up of a revis of a lug, 1 part yayin and 3 parts water. The Gemara now discusses how we arrive at the revis. Says the Gemara, Amr Rabbi Yitzchak, Kista, the Morisa, the Hava B'tzipurihi. The kli called a kista that was used to measure the fish oil called Morisa, that was in Sipuri, the city of Sipuri. Hava Kimin Luga the Mikdasha. It was the same measurement of a lug of the Beis HaMikdash. Ubo Mesharin Revi Shel Pesach, and that we use to divide into the 4 koisos to determine a revis in each kois. Rabbi Yochanan said, Timnaisa Kidmaisa Dahava B'Tiveria. There was an original measurement that was used in Tiveria. This measurement was used originally, and it was more than the typical measurement that's used today. Havas Yisera al Dariva. It was an additional revis than the current measurement of the Timnyasa. Uba Meshar Revi Shel Pesach, and that's how we then arrive at the revis of the Dalit Koisos. In other words, we take the original Timnyasa and we pour it into the current Timnyasa. And since it's a revis more, the water that is still remaining in the original Kli, that's a revis, and that's what we then use to determine the Dalid Koisos. Rav Chisda said, revis shel Torah, the revis of the Torah, that means halacha l'Moshe miSinai, that there's a revis. For example, a Nazir who drinks a revis of yayin min haTorah has a prohibition min haTorah, halacha l'Moshe miSinai, when he drinks a revis. What is the measurement of that revis of the Torah? Etzba'oim al etzba'oim. It's 2 fingers by 2 fingers. Now a finger refers to the middle of the gudal. So 2 of those, middle of the gudal, each gudal, the Beinoni's gudal is approximately 1 inch. So 2 by 2. Berum etzba'oim v'chetzi etzba v'chomesh etzba. And the height of 2 etzba plus a half an etzba plus a fifth of an etzba. So therefore it comes out to be, that would be 2 by 2 etzboim, and the height would be 2 plus 7/10. In other words, the half of the etzba would be 5/10, and the chomesh of an etzba, a fifth, would be 2/10. So then 2 and 5 would be 7/10. A total of 2 and 7/10 would be the height. Kedetanya, the Torah brings a brayso. It says in the pasuk, I'll read the pasuk in its entirety. V'ish kiseitze mimenu shichva zera. When a person he's a carry, he has shichva zera that has emanated from him and renders him tamei. V'rochatz b'mayim es kol b'saroi. And he then washes his entire body in the water. V'tamei ad ha'erev. And then he's tamei until nightfall. He's herav shemesh. So the Brisa says, V'rochatz b'mayim es kol b'saroi. He washes his body in all of the water. Shelo yehi davar chaytes bein b'sar l'mayim. There shouldn't be anything that is then in between the body and the water itself. Nothing that's going to be a chatzitza. As it states over here, that he's rochatz as kol b'sara. The entire body has to be immersed all at once without any chatzitza. B'mayim. Why doesn't it say b'mayim instead of b'mayim? To teach you b'mei mikvah. The water. The water means the water that is naturally gathered, as opposed to mayim she'uvim, which is collected in a kli. Es kol b'sara. It doesn't say es b'sara. Es kol b'sara. Mayim shekol gufoy oile behen, where the entire body is immersed in this water. V'kama hein asked the Brisa, and how much is this that a person is toivel himself and then because tahor in what we call a mikvah, on top of kuf tes amud beis, amma al amma berum shalosh amos. It's one amma by one amma lengthwise and one amma widthwise. Berum shalosh amos, and the height of 3 amos. V'shiar chacham shiur mei mikvah arboim so, and the chachamim ascertain that this is the amount of 40 saw. So from here, with a calculation that the Rishonim bring, this calculation derives the revis that we talked about before of 2 etzba'os by 2 etzba'os, which is a height of 2 7/10 etzba'os. Omar Rav Ashi Amar Li Ravin Bar Chinano Shulchan Shel Mikdash, the Shulchan that was placed in the Heichal, the golden Shulchan that had the Lechem Aponim. That Shulchan was Shel Prokim Hava, that had parts to it. In other words, parts that were able to be detached. Why? The Isaac Chiduke Hava Mehade, because if you will say that they remained intact and they could not be detached, then Amta Ba'amta Hechi Metavle, then how can you toivel the Shulchan who has a width of 1 amma? How can you go ahead and toivel that in a mikvah of an amma by an amma? First of all, you have to then detach the legs, and then not only that, but the width of the amma has to be that you can't put the entire amma in. So therefore, it must be that's detached, that you can then fold it into 2 parts. Says the Gemara, my kasha, why is that a difficulty? Dilba beyam she'ose shloimo haya matbilei. Perhaps they just were toivel it, they're matbil it, the shulchan, if it got tamei, into the yam shel shloimo, instead of the classical mikvah that was used for the other kelim, which was 1 amma by another amma. Here they use the am shel shloimo, the Tani Rebbe Chia. Yam she'ose shlomo machzik 150 mikvah tahara. It was it had the amount, it had the volume of 150, and therefore it was easily able to then take the shulchan and able to matbil it there. So therefore you have no proof that indeed the shulchan was something that was detached. Perhaps they took the entire shulchan and were matbil in the Yam Shel Shlomo, which was machzik 150, and therefore it was not a problem to be matbil such a shulchan.